Tēnā koutou. My name is Loretta Garrett from Scion, and today I'll be presenting on predicting a productivity response with nitrogen fertiliser addition and an update on the nutrient balance model. So I will present today on two topics: predicting a productivity response with nitrogen fertiliser application and an update on the nutrient balance model. New Zealand planted forests can be deficient in nutrients, and the addition of fertiliser to forests has in the past been to correct nutrient deficiencies and not as a tool to boost productivity. There is now a shift in focus to increasing productivity and building asset value, and fertiliser addition is one tool for doing this. Confidence in knowing if a stand will respond to nitrogen fertiliser is low in the forestry sector. This is due to a large range in productivity responses as a result of fertiliser addition. This figure here shows an analysis of historical fertiliser trials and what productivity responses were measured post-fertiliser application. The results are highly variable, with both positive and negative growth responses. However, if a positive response is going to occur, it will most likely occur within 1 to 3 years after nitrogen fertiliser addition. This uncertainty must be addressed to increase forestry sector confidence when applying nitrogen fertiliser to improve productivity. How do we approach addressing the question of will a site respond to nitrogen fertiliser addition? Data sets from past research are available to investigate why a forest may or may not respond to nitrogen fertiliser. And we have a collaboration with Associate Professor Brian Strahm, who has used nitrogen enrichment factor to predict a productivity response in planted forests in the United States. We then piloted predicting a productivity response using the nitrogen enrichment factor and random forest modelling. In nature, we have heavy and light nitrogen. The ratio of light to heavy nitrogen is used to understand how nitrogen moves from the soil to the plant. An enrichment factor can be calculated using foliage and soil 15N. The more negative this number is, the harder the nitrogen is for plants to access. Past fertiliser trials were sourced, targeting nitrogen fertiliser application of 200 kilograms per hectare, and they also had an archived soil and foliage sample that could be tested for 15N. We developed a random forest model using a number of inputs, including the nitrogen enrichment factor. The results from the model showed tree age and enrichment factor were the two most important variables associated with tree growth, which is periodic annual increment of basal area. And to gain the best growth response with nitrogen fertiliser, target forest stands between 3 to 15 years of age when there is the freedom to grow, and target sites with a more negative enrichment factor where the nitrogen is currently hard for plants to access. To show you how the model can be used in decision making, we have 3 sites at mid-rotation which we would like to decide if the application of nitrogen fertiliser will result in a growth response. The sites range from more negative enrichment factor to less negative enrichment factor, and also include the other site variables to drive the model. This type of output can support decisions on where to apply fertiliser and can also be used in the nutrient balance model to understand on-site nutrient stocks over multiple rotations. To conclude, the random forest model can predict a productivity response with nitrogen fertiliser addition and showed the nitrogen enrichment factor to be of a high importance. Applications and outlook of this work are confidence in productivity gains through site-targeted nitrogen fertiliser application. It could support the next development stage for nutrient balance model to include a site-specific productivity change with nitrogen fertiliser addition. And new data from nitrogen trials will allow model testing and validation. And further model training with new data will allow improved site response predictions and identify limiting factors as to why a site may not respond. Moving on to the second part of the talk for the nutrient balance model update, with a focus on making NuBalM site-specific for nutrient status. NuBalM predicts nitrogen phosphorus pools in the live biomass and forest floor over multiple rotations and can be used as a planning tool to support nutrient management decisions. NuBalM is part of the forest carbon predictor model and has been developed for nitrogen and phosphorus using Puraki forest biomass data, which is a high fertility ex-pasture site. NuBalM has a choice of 3 fertility settings: high, medium and low. The high setting is based on the fertile Puraki forest and the low setting from Kaingaroa forest biomass data, and the medium is simply the average of the two. How it works is, if a medium or low site is selected, an offset is applied to the nitrogen and phosphorus concentrations in the biomass and forest floor components. The offset reduces the biomass component nitrogen and phosphorus concentrations from that of the high setting when predicting forest nitrogen and phosphorus stocks. We wanted to do better than the subjective choice of high, medium and low by using a soil sample from the site to set the fertility input for NuBalM. The following slides describe the FGR funded work to make this improvement. We achieved this by targeting a trial series across a range of soil fertility with clonal tree plantings. The sites were selected based on soil carbon to nitrogen ratio, which is an indicator of low to high fertility. We sampled the soil, stemwood, foliage and forest floor at each of these sites to know how related the soil results were to the stem, foliage and forest floor. If they were highly related, we then had confidence in using the soil to describe the site fertility. Using the soil sample, nitrogen stock estimates from NuBalM performed well for a site with no fertiliser addition. Where fertiliser had been applied, they tended to under-predict nitrogen stocks. It was found that soil phosphorus was unrelated to stemwood phosphorus, however, was related to foliage phosphorus. The result was the phosphorus stock estimates from NuBalM tended to be over-predicted. I'll now show you an example of using NuBalM in decision making. NuBalM has simple inputs of a given 300 index value, excuse me, or a stand measurement, silvicultural management regime, and the site fertility measured using a soil sample. You can use NuBalM to predict your actual productivity nutrient uptake and what the gap in nutrients is required to reach that target productivity. The example here shows the amount of nitrogen in the tree biomass and forest floor over one rotation for the actual productivity and the target productivity. What the model run shows is that there is a 340 kilogram per hectare nitrogen gap. This gap must be overcome from either external inputs or through making better use of what is already there. To conclude, NuBalM is now site-specific for nitrogen. It requires simple inputs of 300 index or stand measurement silvicultural management regime, and a site fertility measured using a soil sample. A very basic version is available on Forecaster. Scion has the latest version and can work with industry to generate predictions. NuBalM is currently being used in treatment planning for the accelerated trials, linking with Overseer, in planning nitrogen mining from nitrogen-saturated soils, and there's interest from councils to use NuBalM to support afforestation efforts. Ngā mihi.